"You're fired," Rick said. His face was red with anger. "Pack your things and get out." I had just helped Mrs. Patterson, a 73-year-old customer who'd been shopping with us for 8 years. Rick had been rude to her. He'd embarrassed her because she couldn't afford to pay full price to restock her youth charities fishing programs. Standing there, I had no idea that 18 months later, I'd be sitting in that same office saying those exact words to Rick. "You're fired." But let me start from the beginning. My name is Maggie Jensen, and this is how I went from getting fired to owning my boss's company. 5 years ago, I thought I had my dream job. I was 28 and worked at Angler's Paradise, the best fishing equipment store in Durango, Colorado. I started as an assistant manager but worked my way up to procurement manager. In a fishing store, the procurement manager does everything. I built relationships with suppliers, I negotiated prices, I made sure we had the right gear when customers needed it, and I was really good at it. By my 3rd year, I had made our supplier process 40% better. I knew every sales rep from the big fishing companies by name. When new products came out, we got them first. When supplies were low, we got priority. Our store wasn't just surviving, we were doing great. We sponsored the big trout fishing contest every year, which brought thousands of customers. We had loyal customers who came to us for advice, not just gear. The owner, Bob Henley, was like a mentor to me. He'd built Angler's Paradise from nothing in 1987. Bob understood that our business wasn't really about selling fishing rods. It was about being part of the community and helping people. "Maggie," Bob told me during my review, "you have the best feel for this business I've ever seen. You understand that when someone walks through those doors, they're not just buying equipment, they're buying their next adventure." Bob was 67 and thinking about retiring. His kids lived back east and didn't want the fishing business. For months, he hinted that he might sell to the right person, someone who understood what Angler's Paradise meant to the community. I started putting together a business plan. With my savings and a bank loan, I thought I could make it work. Bob seemed interested in keeping the store in the family. Then one Tuesday morning, Bob called an emergency meeting. "I know this is a surprise," he said, looking uncomfortable, "but I've sold Angler's Paradise. The new owner is Rick Morrison, and he starts Monday." My heart sank. Later, I found out Rick had offered 30% above asking price for a cash deal. Bob couldn't turn it down. Rick Morrison walked into our store like he was taking over enemy territory. He was 35, wore expensive suits that looked silly in our mountain town, and he drove a BMW that cost more than most employees made in 2 years. It was almost as if he deliberately wanted to rub people the wrong way. The first red flag was the meeting he called for 7 a.m., 30 minutes before we usually opened. "Listen up, people," he said, not bothering to learn our names. "I bought this place because I saw potential, but looking around, I see a lot of dead weight." Dead weight? I had improved our supplier efficiency by 40% last year. From now on, we're running a tight ship. No more chatting with customers about fishing stories. No more long breaks. His eyes landed on Jim Patterson, our 60-year-old sales guy who'd been helping local fishermen for 20 years. And no more giving discounts just because someone's a regular. Jim raised his hand politely. "Sir, building relationships with customers is how we—" "Did I ask for input?" Rick snapped. "You work for me now. You'll do things my way or find somewhere else to work." "Understood?" We all nodded silently, but everyone was appalled. What was this? I thought. The Dark Ages? This was no way to treat staff he'd just met 5 minutes ago. The same staff who'd made the shop valuable enough to buy. I couldn't believe it. He had just bought the most successful fishing store in town and wanted to change everything that made it successful. After the meeting, I tried to talk to Rick. "I'm Maggie Jensen, the procurement manager. I'd love to walk you through our supplier relationships." "Yeah, Maggie," he interrupted. "Bob mentioned you." He was looking at his phone while talking. "I've been in retail for 15 years. I know how to run a business. What I need from you is work, not strategy meetings." "But our supplier relationships are specialized. The fishing industry is retail business," he interrupted again. "Just like any other retail. You order stuff, customers buy stuff, we make money. It's not rocket science." That conversation told me everything. Rick had no idea what he'd bought. He had no respect for his employees, their knowledge, or their experience in the business. I didn't need anyone to tell me that this was a new era. The days of this being a happy, friendly, family-like business were over, and there was going to be trouble soon. Over the next 6 months, Rick destroyed everything we'd built. First, he cut our staff from 12 to 7 people. He got rid of part-time workers, so we didn't have enough people during busy times. Then he canceled our sponsorship of the annual trout fishing contest. This event brought thousands of customers every September. When I explained this, Rick just shrugged. "Sponsorships are throwing money away," he said. "If customers want to shop here, they'll shop here." But the worst changes were with our suppliers. I'd spent 4 years building relationships with every major fishing company. These weren't just business deals. They were partnerships built on trust and respect. Rick saw this as weakness. One morning he said, "Maggie, call Berkeley and tell them we're not buying any more products until they drop their prices by 15%. Berkeley had been our main fishing line supplier for 6 years. Their products made up 12% of our sales. "Rick, they've been great to work with for 6 years. They already give us good prices." "I don't care. Business is business." I tried to explain that Berkeley might stop working with us, but he waved me off. "There are plenty of other suppliers. Find cheaper ones." He didn't understand how the fishing business worked. Each brand had loyal customers who came to us specifically for their gear. You couldn't just swap suppliers like they were the same thing. I had to make the call to Tom Williams, our rep at Berkeley. I'd worked with Tom for 4 years. "Maggie, you know we've always taken care of you guys. Our prices are fair and we never miss deliveries. What's going on?" I couldn't tell him my new boss was an idiot. 2 weeks later, Berkeley dropped us. We lost $30,000 in monthly sales. But Rick wasn't done yet. He went after every single major supplier we had. He called Shimano products overpriced Japanese junk. He tried to bully other companies into giving him special deals. He was rude to everyone. Each conversation ended the same way, another supplier deciding they didn't want to work with us anymore. Within 4 months, we'd lost 6 major suppliers. Our shelves looked empty. Customers started noticing their favorite brands were gone, replaced by cheap alternatives Rick found online. "Why are sales down?" Rick would ask in meetings. "We've got good prices, we've got inventory. What's the problem?" The problem was that he didn't understand what made us successful. We weren't successful because we had the lowest prices. We were successful because we had the best products, the smartest staff, and the best relationships in the fishing community. Rick had destroyed all 3. The moment I knew Rick had to go was the day he humiliated Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson was 73 years old. Her late husband had been a fishing guide. After he died, she started running a youth fishing program at the community center, teaching kids the sport her husband loved. Every month she came in with a list, buying supplies for the program. Bob had always given her a 20% discount. Not charity, but because supporting youth fishing was part of our mission. Those kids would become lifelong customers. "Ma'am, I'm not running a charity," Rick was saying when I walked up. "The total is $347.89. Mrs. Patterson looked confused. "But you've always given the youth program a discount. I have the receipt from last time." She was digging through her purse with shaking hands. "I don't care what the old owner did," Rick said coldly. "That's not how I run things." I could see Mrs. Patterson doing math in her head. The discount meant the difference between buying everything the kids needed and having to cut items. She was using her own Social Security money when the community center budget wasn't enough. "Rick," I said quietly, "we've always supported the youth program. Maggie, stay out of this." He turned back to Mrs. Patterson. "Look, lady, either pay full price or put some stuff back. I've got other customers waiting." Then he added loudly, "You may be running a charity. I have a business to run. No money, no goods." There were no other customers. The store was empty. Mrs. Patterson's face turned red, not from anger but from deep embarrassment. This woman who'd lost her husband, who spent her own money teaching kids to fish, was being treated like a criminal. I'll just take half of these items," she whispered, starting to put things back. That's when I snapped. I pulled out my credit card and handed it to Sarah, our cashier. "Ring up Mrs. Patterson's full order on my card," I said. Rick's face went purple. "Maggie, what the hell are you doing?" "Taking care of a valued customer." After Mrs. Patterson left with her supplies and a grateful smile, Rick cornered me in the office. I didn't need to be a seer to guess what would happen next. "You're fired," he said. "Pack your things and get out. You can't fire me for using my own money to help a customer. I can fire you for going against me. You made me look bad in front of everyone." I knew arguing wouldn't help. Fine, but you're making a huge mistake. I handle all the supplier relationships. I know this business. Rick smiled cruelly. I'll figure it out. How hard can it be? Those were the most expensive words he ever spoke. I cleaned out my desk and drove home, thinking my career in the fishing industry was over. But I wasn't thinking about finding a new job. I was thinking about the phone call I'd gotten 3 weeks earlier. My great-aunt Helen had died at 91. She was my grandmother's sister, someone I'd only met a few times. What I didn't know was that Aunt Helen had been smart with money and investments. She left me $180,000 in cash and stocks. The lawyer said she'd followed my career and wanted her money to help me build something meaningful. I'd planned to use it for a house down payment, but sitting in my car after getting fired, watching Rick yell at Sarah through the window, I had a different idea. What if I didn't just find a new job? What if instead I started my own business? After all, I was a better manager than Rick would ever become. And I knew how to treat customers, suppliers, and staff. There was just no way I could run a business worse than Rick had. He was a disaster. That night, I made a list of everyone who'd quit or been fired since Rick took over. Then I started making calls. Jim, it's Maggie. I have a crazy idea. The response was amazing. Jim Patterson was first. He hadn't been fired, but he'd been thinking about quitting anyway. Rick had been increasingly rude and mean to him. Maggie, I've been in this business 25 years. I've never seen anyone destroy a good store as fast as Rick has. If you're serious about starting something new, count me in. Next was Sarah Mitchell, our former cashier who'd quit 2 weeks before I was fired. Sarah was 24, studying business, and understood customer service better than Rick ever would. I called Marcus Thompson, our inventory guy Rick had fired for taking too long. Lisa Wong had been our part-time salesperson until Rick eliminated her job. Tom Bradley had handled our relationships with local fishing guides until Rick decided that was unnecessary. David Kim had done equipment repairs until Rick outsourced everything. Within a week, I had 5 former Anglers Paradise employees, as well as Jim, ready to start a new fishing store. These weren't just any employees. They were the core team that had made the original store successful. We pooled our money. My $180,000 inheritance plus $45,000 from the others. Jim put in $12,000 from retirement savings. Sarah contributed $5,000 from working 2 jobs. The others invested between $6,000 and $10,000 each. But before looking for a location, I made more calls. I called every supplier I'd worked with, starting with the ones Rick had insulted. Hi Tom, it's Maggie Jensen. I know you're probably wondering why Anglers Paradise has been so difficult lately. The stories made me angry, but they also gave me hope. Tom at Berkeley was thrilled to hear from me. Maggie, when that Morrison guy called making demands, we couldn't believe it. We'd never had problems before. What happened? I explained there was new management that didn't understand the business, and several of us were starting a new store focused on the relationships that made the original successful. Count us in, Tom said immediately. We'd love to work with someone who actually gets this industry. Tom at Shimano was even more encouraging. That Morrison guy called our products overpriced Japanese junk. I've been in this business 15 years and never been insulted like that. I'm on board with anything you want to do to crush his business. When I explained our plans, Tom offered something unexpected. Maggie, if you're serious, I can get you first access to our new products. We'd rather work with people who appreciate quality. The pattern continued with every supplier. Rick hadn't just burned bridges, he'd destroyed them. But the relationships I'd built were strong enough to survive. By the end of the week, I had commitments from 12 major suppliers. We weren't just starting a fishing store. We were going to have better supplier relationships than Anglers Paradise ever had. We found the perfect location, a 3,500 square foot building on Main Avenue, 2 miles from Anglers Paradise. It had better highway visibility, more parking, and had been a sporting goods store before. The rent was $4,500 per month, and the landlord gave us 3 months reduced rent for improvements. We spent 2 months fixing up the space. We decided to call ourselves Rocky Mountain Anglers. By March, exactly 1 year after Rick took over Anglers Paradise, we were ready to open. Our opening day was better than we'd hoped. Word had spread through the fishing community that the old Anglers Paradise team was starting fresh. Customers who'd been frustrated with Rick's changes were eager to see what we were building. Mrs. Patterson was our first customer. She bought supplies for the youth program, with her 20% discount plus an extra 10% for being our first customer. "I'm so proud of you all," said with tears in her eyes. By the end of our first week, we'd made $18,000 in sales. By month 1, we were at $42,000. 3 months in, we were consistently hitting $55,000 per month, already close to what Angler's Paradise had done in its best years under Bob. We resumed sponsoring the trout fishing contest. We started women's fishing workshops. David's repair services became so popular that guides sent clients from other towns. Most importantly, we created the customer experience Rick had destroyed. When someone walked into Rocky Mountain Anglers, they got expert advice, personal service, and connections to the fishing community. Meanwhile, I watched Angler's Paradise slowly die. Without good staff, quality suppliers, or community relationships, Rick's store was losing customers fast. Sarah still had friends working there and would update me. It was worse than I'd imagined. Rick had replaced Jim with a 19-year-old who'd never been fishing. When customers asked for advice, the kid would shrug and tell them to check manufacturer websites. The inventory was a disaster. Rick had filled shelves with cheap equipment, but he didn't understand seasonal patterns. He'd order winter gear in spring and summer stuff in fall. Customer complaints were piling up. Local guides stopped recommending Angler's Paradise. Online reviews dropped from 4.8 stars to 1.9 stars. The final blow came when Rick lost the Orvis account. Orvis is one of the most respected names in fly fishing. Rick had demanded they match online discount prices, not understanding that Orvis has strict standards for dealers. When the Orvis rep explained their policy, Rick became nasty and threatened to fine suppliers who want to do business. Orvis revoked Angler's Paradise's dealer status 2 weeks later. Losing Orvis wasn't just about sales. It told the whole fishing community that Angler's Paradise no longer met serious standards. 9 months after opening Rocky Mountain Anglers, we were thriving. Monthly sales consistently exceeded $65,000. We'd expanded our staff and become the go-to fishing store for the whole region. That's when Sarah brought me news I'd been waiting for. "I heard Angler's Paradise is for sale," she said. "Rick's asking $85,000. Apparently, he's tired of dealing with ungrateful employees and demanding customers." My heart raced. Buying Angler's Paradise would give us their location, eliminate our only competitor, and let us control the market. That evening, I called a meeting with my partners. "Are you sure about this?" asked Tom. "What if Rick won't sell to us?" "Then we make sure he doesn't know it's us buying it." I contacted a business broker in Denver. Our out-of-state investment group offered $75,000 cash, closing in 30 days. Rick accepted immediately. The financial records were even worse than expected. In 18 months, Rick's revenue had dropped 42%. He was losing money every month and covering losses with personal savings. But these problems were opportunities for us. We had supplier relationships and proven systems. Buying Angler's Paradise would give us their customer database, location, and a monopoly on fishing retail in Durango. On closing day, the business broker called Rick. "The buyers want to meet at the store at 10 a.m. to handle the transition and walk through the property." "Fine," Rick said. "I'll be there." He showed up 15 minutes late, carrying a small box of personal items. The store was empty except for one person standing by the counter. Rick stopped dead in his tracks. "What the hell are you doing here?" he said, staring at me in complete shock. "Hello, Rick." "Maggie?" His voice cracked. Why are you— I fired you. You can't just walk into my store." "Actually, I can. As of yesterday, this isn't your store anymore." Rick looked around frantically like he was expecting someone else to appear. "Where are the new owners? The broker said they wanted to meet me here. Did they send you? Are you working for them or something?" "In a way, yes." "What does that mean? What are you talking about?" Rick was getting agitated, his voice rising. "You were fired months ago. You have no business being here." I pulled out the signed purchase documents. "Rick, I am the new owner. My partners and I bought your store yesterday." Rick stared at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. "That's impossible," he whispered. "The broker said it was an out-of-state investment group. You're just a fired employee. You don't have that kind of money." Apparently I do. But, Rick was sputtering now, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. You mean this whole time, the anonymous buyers? That was you? That was us. The $75,000 cash offer? Yep. Rick stumbled backward like he'd been slapped. This has to be some kind of joke, some kind of revenge scheme. You can't just, people don't just what, Rick? Buy failing businesses from incompetent owners? This is illegal. You tricked me. You used a fake name. I used a business broker, which is completely legal. You signed all the documents. Your lawyer reviewed everything. The money cleared yesterday. Rick was looking around wildly now like he was trapped. I don't understand. How do you have that kind of money? You were just a employee. An employee you fired for helping a customer? But where did you get $75,000? I inherited money from my great-aunt, plus my business partners and I pooled our resources. Business partners? Rick's voice was getting higher. What business partners? Jim, Sarah, Marcus, Lisa, Tom, and David? Remember them? All the competent employees you fired or drove away? Rick's face went white. You mean all this time, while I was struggling to keep this place running, you were all working together against me? We weren't working against you, Rick. We were working for ourselves. We started Rocky Mountain Anglers 9 months ago. Rocky Mountain, that new store that's been stealing my customers? We didn't steal anything. Your customers chose to shop with people who actually know about fishing. Rick slumped against the wall. I can't believe this. This is like some kind of nightmare. For you, maybe. For us, it's justice. Justice? Rick's shock was turning to anger now. You call this justice? This is sabotage. This is conspiracy. This is business, Rick. The same business you told me was not rocket science, remember? We won't be needing your services as manager. What do you mean? I'm the owner. I said I wanted to stay on as manager. You were the owner. Now you're just someone who used to work here, and frankly, your performance has been unacceptable. I opened the folder I'd brought and read from my notes. In 18 months, this store lost 42% of its customers. You alienated 17 major suppliers, costing $280,000 in annual sales. You created a hostile work environment that made 8 experienced employees quit. Rick was turning red. You can't do this. I'm just documenting your performance. You failed to maintain proper inventory. You eliminated profitable community partnerships. Your customer reviews dropped from 4.8 to 1.9 stars. I continued. You destroyed relationships with companies like Orvis, Shimano, and Berkeley that took years to build. You replaced knowledgeable staff with people who couldn't help customers. I closed the folder. You basically didn't understand the business you bought. This isn't just ordinary retail. It's a specialized industry that needs expertise and relationships. You treated it as if you were just selling building materials and almost destroyed a successful 30-year-old business. Rick, this store didn't fail because of bad luck. It failed because you don't understand customer service, supplier relationships, or leadership. You ran a successful business into the ground through ignorance and arrogance. Rick was quiet for a long moment, staring at the floor. When he looked up, his eyes were different, defeated. So what happens now? He asked quietly. Now you collect your personal items and leave. We're converting this space into our warehouse and distribution center. I handed him an envelope. That's 2 weeks severance, more than you gave anyone you fired. Today is your last day. Sarah stepped forward to escort him to get his things. Then I walked to the door and held it open as he left. It took all my willpower to resist saying, "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." But why kick a man when he's down? After Rick left, Sarah and I stood in the empty store. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like justice." We converted the old Angler's Paradise into our warehouse. Within 2 years, Rocky Mountain Anglers was making $1.4 million annually. We employed 18 people and became Colorado's largest independent fishing retailer. Mrs. Patterson's youth program grew to serve over 40 kids. We won Retailer of the Year from the fishing industry's main association. Rick moved back to Denver and became a car salesman. 3 weeks after I fired him, he left a nasty Google review calling us unprofessional and vindictive. My public response became local legend. Thank you for the feedback, Rick. We maintain the same high standards for employee performance that we expect from our suppliers and community partners. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. 3 years later, I ran into Rick at Denver Airport. He looked tired and older, wearing cheap clothes instead of expensive suits. "Business is good?" he asked, seeing my Rocky Mountain Angler's bag. "We're doing well." "I talked to a business consultant about what went wrong," he said quietly. "I learned some things about industry expertise that I didn't understand at the time. It was as close to an apology as I'd get." "The fishing industry is specialized," I said. "It takes time to understand." As we boarded, Rick asked, "Did you plan the whole thing, buying my store?" "Honestly, no, the opportunity came up and we took it. But I won't lie, it was satisfying." Rick actually smiled. "I guess I had it coming." "You weren't a bad person, Rick. You just made bad decisions in a business you didn't understand." We sat in different sections. I never saw Rick Morrison again. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's succeeding so completely that your former boss becomes just a cautionary tale. And every time Mrs. Patterson comes in for her monthly shopping, I remember why I did this. Not just for revenge, but to prove that treating people with respect isn't just right. It's also smart business.